Hello and welcome to the finals of Grand Prix Turin. Just one more match to go, and Robin Dolar on the play, having finished higher in the Swiss. He's got blue-black control. Leon van der Linden, he's on Mardu vehicles, and immediately a Thraben Inspector from Leon and a cycled sensor from Robin Dolar. Off to the races here in our final match of the weekend. At least from Turin, we will of course have Grand Prix Washington DC coverage kicking off right after this tournament completion. So plenty of standard for all of you watching here on twitch.tv/magic.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, somewhat unexpected decks in the finals here. The debate was pretty diverse. 7 different archetypes, but no Remina Bread and blue-black control, more the vehicles. Not necessarily the types of decks that were on everyone's radar.
Looks like this early start from Robin Dolar features a lot of copies of Sensor. One cycled, one has already stopped a Heart of Kiran, and it looks like there's yet another copy in Robin Dolar's hand, along with a little bit more in the way of counter magic. So it may be that Leon, after having stuck the initial Thraben Inspector, struggles to get too much more on the battlefield. Scrap Heap Scrounger here looks like it may have the nod from Robin Dolar.
Yeah, countering that is not going to be great either, because eventually it'll come back, although Leon doesn't have a creature in the graveyard to bring it back yet, and this is a matchup where Robin Dolar, as the name of his deck suggests, is taking the control role. So what Robin is trying to do is to contain any threats that Leon puts out, at least in the early turns. And there, well, Essence Scatter on Scrap Heap Scrounger does work for the time being, giving Robin some breathing room. And once the board is clear and Robin has taken control of the game, Robin can deploy powerful win conditions like the Scarab God and Torrential Gearhulk to turn the corner. Leon, in the meantime, is essentially taking the aggro role of the matchup. He's hoping to win the game before those 5 and 6 mana win conditions come down.
Well, he gets another card censored in this take. It is Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. Got to feel pretty good to be able to stop a 4-drop with a sensor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good exchange for Dolar so far.
Dolar has missed his 5th land drop. Not necessarily the end of the world, but he would certainly rather be able to get up to 6 mana where he can threaten basically any card in his deck coming out. Leon takes a turn off to crack a clue.
Digging for some action here. If you're in Dolar's seat, you're pretty happy to see Leon crack the clue there, because first of all, it means that Leon doesn't really have all that much in hand right now. And he also had to, let's say, tap 2 mana, which means that Leon doesn't have access to Archangel Avacyn mana at this point. So Robin also doesn't have to worry about that coming down at instant speed. So far things are looking good for the Slovenian player, who is looking to add another Grand Prix trophy to his resume.
Now, Robin saw 2 copies of Essence Scatter there on the top of his deck during the scribe. Put one on the top, one on the bottom.
Mm-hmm. I like that. At this point, looking at how Leon has been playing, you can't really expect him to have a lot of creatures in hand. If he had a creature, he probably would have played it. It's possible that Leon had Archangel Avacyn in hand, but no 5th land. But over the course of the next few turns, you're probably not going to use 2 Essence Scatters. But hey, you're still a control deck, you're not under a lot of pressure. That Thraben Inspector is not going to close out the game anytime soon. So keeping 1 Essence Scatter just to counter, well, the potential Archangel Avacyn that might still be in hand, or more likely some creatures drawn over the course of the next few turns. That's fine. So I like that split.
We're just hearing that Leon van der Linden was on a Malta 5 in this game. So if it looks like he's running out of cards in hand, it's because he's running out of cards in hand.
Mm-hmm. And passing the turn here. I'm pretty sure that I saw Archangel Avacyn in Leon's hand. The players had exchanged deck lists at the beginning of the match, so Robin will at least be aware of the possibility that it is coming down. But looks like Robin already has Grasp of Darkness at the ready to kill the angel in case she comes down.
So looking at a land and a Fatal Push here, Robin Dolar deciding if he wants to draw them with his Glimmer of Genius or something else. Ultimately, it feels like he can do a little better, finds Disallow and another land.
Yeah, I think Robin is just digging for win conditions at this point. I like this play by Leon, playing the Archangel Avacyn while Robin is essentially still tapped out. Even though it has flash, you don't always need to play flash cards at the end of the opponent's turn, especially not when at that point the blue player may have counter magic mana up. At least now the Archangel is on the battlefield, and the blue-black control deck does not have any sorcery speed sweepers apart from flaying tendrils, so you don't have to worry about something like Fumigate.
I think the principal cause of worry here if you're Leon van der Linden is the fact that the control player has almost a full grip and plenty of lands available. All of these are basically the dream scenario for any control player.
Yes.
While Leon has threats on the board and a small life advantage, how long he's going to be able to keep that going is anyone's guess at this point.
Yeah, I think the window on this game is closing down soon, and Leon likely also knows it.
I mean, Thraben Inspector's done good work.
It has attacked for 6 damage so far. That is indeed a lot of work for a 1-drop. Even drew a card. But by itself, Thraben Inspector is not gonna win this game. One thing that the death of Archangel Avacyn does allow is for Scrapheap Scrounger to return. So that one will likely be activated at the end of Robin's turn, so that Leon doesn't walk into Flaying Tendrils. Although it does mean that Robin could disallow the activation at that point.
And one thing that Scrapheap Scrounger does do quite well, regardless of how well it gets back into play on that activation, is it lets you get Archangel Avacyn out of your graveyard, because when you're playing against a deck with the Scarab God, you really don't want to have to worry about your opponent flashing in your own copy of Archangel Avacyn at some point for a very, very substantial problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now Robin has Flaying Tendrils in hand, so he's just using his life total as a resource. He's still at a double-digit life total. He can take some hits and will likely sweep the board and exiling Scrapheap Scrounger in the process on the next turn. At least he has access to that effect in hand.
So Supreme Will here, just so that Robin Dolar can dig a little deeper, using the second ability on it, essentially an impulse. Looking at the top 4, putting 1 in hand, the rest, well, they'll go away for now.
Yeah, at this point, if you're in Robin's seat, you feel like, well, this game is going well. I'm, let's say, in control. What I'm looking for is, well, mostly a win condition. So that's the Scarab God or Torrential Gearhulk. Preferably 2, because it could easily be that Leon is holding a copy of Unlicensed Disintegration to deal with one of them. At the same time, Robin needs to be somewhat careful in that he doesn't allow big threats like an Archangel Avacyn to resolve and leave him potentially without an answer. So just keeping some counter magic mana up at all times is a wise route to take as the control player here.
Well, now we get an opportunity to get rid of Scrapheap Scrounger for good. Flaying Tendrils, giving creatures -2/-2. And if it kills them, well, they're going to get exiled.
There's a nice play by Leon. I said, I think before this match, that Fatal Push is just a completely dead card, at least in game 1, because Robin doesn't have any creatures that cost 4 mana or less. But Fatal Push on your own Scrapheap Scrounger, that at least means that it won't be exiled by the Flaying Tendrils, so could be returned at some point later in the game.
And here's another Archangel Avacyn. Lots of mana open for Robin Dolar here, so we'll see what he has to say about that one.
I would be very surprised if that Archangel is gonna attack on the next turn.
Essence Scatter is the answer that he goes with. That means that he's still able to keep up 3 mana.
Yeah, no, Leon has no cards in hand at all anymore.
Yeah, living off the top of his deck here and watching on. I think that Robin Dolar has actually had a copy of the Scarab God in hand for a little while now. Has just been waiting for an appropriate time to deploy it, and well, I think the time is nigh. Gets to play it with 4 mana up immediately.
Yep, and good play by Leon. Quickly respawned to the Scarab God by activating the Scrapheap Scrounger so that Robin cannot respawn to the Scrapheap Scrounger activation by then exiling the Scrounger. This is going to be a complicated stack otherwise, but No, Dollar is in full control of this game. Even has a disallow as backup in hand. I don't think there's any creatures to no need for that yet.
I mean,
Maybe Leon plays a creature, it'll get countered or killed, and then Robin can turn it into an eternalized zombie. And if Leon never plays any creatures, well then Robin is probably just gonna take the game with 4 attacks by the Scarab God.
yeah, that Scrap Heap Scrounger, not much of a blocker. Not any of a blocker, in fact. And sitting on counter magic always feels nice as a control player, but disallow especially. It's such a versatile piece of counter magic. In addition to countering spells, it can counter activated and triggered abilities as well. And that means that the number of things that can really assault Robin Dolar's life total now comparatively few and far between.
Yeah, it's not like Leon has Ramanab Ruins or anything of the sort in his mana base, but even that would have been stopped. I think Robin even drew Torrential Gearhulk, so that will allow him to close the door on this game in short order.
Almost enough mana that he can flash in Gearhulk, block, and have the mana to get back the Scrap Heap Scrounger as a zombie.
Yeah.
Thraben Inspector. That one looks like it might be a good zombie.
Yeah.
Immediately making a clue and cracking it. Unlicensed Disintegration, the draw there.
That's a good one. Though Robin still has Disallow, and I think at this stage in the game he will be inclined to use the counter magic to protect his win conditions. Because he will be able to win the game so quickly. No point in wasting time.
Goes for a Glimmer of Genius here, and when there's creatures on the battlefield and the control player chooses to draw cards rather than removing them for their effectively free effect.
Yeah, we are
we're in the end game.
Yeah. And typically Glimmer of Genius is one of the best cards in terms of card quality that you can flashback with Torrential Gearhulk.
So Unlicensed Disintegration here targeting Torrential Gearhulk. We've got a nice stack going on here. Disallow on the Unlicensed Disintegration. And Leon van der Linden picks up his cards. He's at 15 life, but he can read the writing on the wall. He is going to have to try again, and for him it's going to have to be 2 games on the bounce if he's going to be lifting the trophy here in Turin, Italy. Robin Dolar just 1 game away from lifting another Grand Prix title.
Yep. Yeah, there was just no way that Leon was coming back from that position. Once you get to the late game, which we were in, the Martyr Vehicles deck is just not very well positioned. Maybe unless the opponent is at 3 life and you can sneak in some final damage via, say, Unlicensed Disintegration or Walking Ballista. But yeah, that was not gonna happen here. I think that that mulligan at the start of the game definitely hampered Leon's ability to deploy a powerful board presence early enough.
Yeah, Robin Dolar had got at some points to cast 4 copies of Glimmer of Genius. His energy got all the way up to 8. Meanwhile, Leon van der Linden started the game having 2 fewer cards in hand.
Yeah, it's not exactly fair. But sideboard may change things. I think Leon can improve his deck by cutting low impact or potentially worthless cards like Fatal Push and Walking Ballista. He may also want to shave, let's say, 1 or 2 Ether Sphere Harvesters, because a high toughness lifelink creature is not exactly where you want to be against a control deck. Good cards that he has in his sideboard are Planeswalkers. Gideon, ally of Zendikar. He called it the best card in Standard, and he felt it would get even better after sideboard, because then games tend to slow down a little bit. He'll surely be bringing that one in, along with Chandra, Torch of Defiance. And he also has access to some other black options like Doomfall and Painful Truths for this matchup if he so desires.
On the other side of things for Robin Dolar, it feels to me like his deck wasn't in terrible shape for game one. I'm interested to see how much you think that it's likely to change after sideboarding.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna change all that much. In his sideboard he has 3 Kalitas Traitor of Geth. That is potentially a very powerful card. One that when I'm playing Mardu vehicles I'm always afraid of facing. On the other hand, I would expect Leon to keep in all of his unlicensed integrations, and he is also adding Chandra, Torch of Defiance, so Leon does have a bunch of answers to Kalitas. Leon could also keep 1 copy of Cut Ribbons. He has a singleton in his main deck just to have some answers for Kalitas. And if you know that your opponent is going to keep in lots of creature removal spells, then boarding in creatures like Kalitas may not be the best course of action. One or two interesting options that I could imagine Robin bringing in are To the Slaughter and Never to Return, just because they are able to deal with planeswalkers, and it is quite typical for Mardu Vehicles decks to bring in additional planeswalkers after sideboard. That's also what Leon has, so I could see some of those coming in for Robin. Robin also has Gifted Eaterborn, Liliana, The Lost Hope. They are playable, I guess, though not necessarily super exciting. And a bunch of blue counter magic that I imagine is mostly for other matchups like other control decks or ramp decks.
Now, something that you will see here, both players have deck lists out in front of them. Those are the deck lists of their opponent. Once you get into the top 8, there is full access to deck lists. So any kind of gamesmanship in terms of how many creatures are going to be in each deck after sideboarding is done with full information rather than based on suspicions as to what the lists are. And that's something that I think in some respects opens the door to playing mind games on how many creatures, especially someone like Robin Dolar would bring in for subsequent games. It makes them a little bit more effective.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a good point. Another factor that the players may have to keep in mind is that Leon is going to be on the play for the next game. At least I assume he's going to choose that. And typically when you're on the play, especially when you're playing still an aggro deck versus a control deck, you want to be making sure that you can hit your curve, right? That you can play creatures early on and punish any stumble by the blue-black control deck, not give them any time or opportunity to leverage their Glimmer of Genius. And that often means going a little bit light on answers and removal spells. So this might mean that Kalitas, as well as perhaps Gifted Eaterborn, might be well positioned to be put into Robin's deck. Robin also has to lower his curve a little bit, I think, because if he just keeps the same mana curve that he had in game 1, his deck might just be a little too slow. He might just have to cut some of the slower, more expensive or card drawing spells in order to make sure that he doesn't get overrun by a fast Mardu draw.
Lovely stuff. It looks like each player has finalized their sideboarding. Robin Dolar just finishing up his shuffling here, making sure that he's actually got 60 cards in his deck after sideboarding. Of course, an important piece of the process. It would be unfortunate to pick up game losses for presenting illegal decks once you get to the final of a Grand Prix. I did hear that Simon Nielsen actually came into this top 8 with 1 game loss from a deck reg error. Unfortunate.
Yeah, I think he registered 2 copies of Chandra in his sideboard without specifying whether that's Torch of Defiance or Chandra Flamecaller. Not a smart thing to do. Still, Simon made it to the top 8 nevertheless, so that's a nice performance for him, and just a bit of a stupid mistake to take a game loss for. But
we live, we learn.
Yeah, basically.
And we share this information so that hopefully you guys can learn without having to live through it. All right, so opening hands being drawn here between Robin Dolar and Leon van der Linden. Let's see what we've got here in what might be the final game of the final match of the finals of Grand Prix Turin.
We'll see soon enough. Even though Robin Dolar is undeniably the more experienced player, in this finals matchup, right? With so many Grand Prix top 8s to his name. Leon van der Linden is also no newcomer to Premier level play. He recently qualified for his first Pro Tour at the last RPDQ, so he's been on quite a magic roll. We'll see him at 2 Pro Tours then, I believe. And he also played the World Magic Cup for the Netherlands last year. So you may not know his name all that well right now, but he is doing quite well for him.
Looking forward to the World Magic Cup this year in Nice. Of course, Nationals season is fast approaching. We have various members of the coverage team either covering or playing in their assorted Nationals. I'll be helping cover English Nationals, which is happening relatively soon. We've got Japanese Nationals first, and of course, the cherry on the cake, US Nationals will be covered later in the month.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see that tournament in action all around the world. It's always a special event, Nationals, and it's not that difficult to qualify for. Just need to assemble the Planeswalker points and show up and come there for an excellent weekend.
Yeah, it looks like Robin Dolar has kept his 6, just considering his scry. That one card there, all out on its lonesome. Will it be the top of the deck? Will it be the bottom? He says, you know what, that one's good enough, I'll draw that one. And he will be drawing on his first turn because, as expected, Leon van der Linden on the play and kicking things off here with the more aggressive of his 1-drops, that being Toolcraft Exemplar.
Yep, and this is the, well, potentially the perfect turn 1 play if he can follow it up with Heart of Kiran or Scrapheap Scrounger. That would be the dream start.
It's just a copy of a Thraben Inspector, but that does create an artifact.
Yeah.
So
good enough.
And actually,
oh wow,
the 1-drop followed by 1-drop, 1-drop, in some respects, might be an even better start than 1-drop, 2-drop for this vehicles list.
It actually is. This puts Robin under a lot of pressure. And now Robin does have 2 Flaying Tendrils in his 75. That would be the perfect answer to this board. But if he does not have a copy of the Sweeper, then Dolar is going to fall down to a low life total very rapidly.
Well, I mean, he's going to 10 just off this attack.
Yeah.
This is how Leon van der Linden drew it up when he wanted to get a quick win with Mardu vehicles. The energy going on the energy bit, not on the clue token. Though there was one clue there, so that's accurate. Now we have our first actual factual vehicle of the game, that being Aethersphere Harvester.
Now, is there a Flaying Tendrils?
It's going to have to be pretty well on time. Choked Estuary revealing a swamp. There is Tendrils. All right, we have a game on our hands here. Robin Dolar playing on hard mode, starting on 10 life, but he's managed to deal with the opening barrage of attacks from Leon van der Linden. Let's see where the follow-up lies. I think I saw a copy of Pia Nalar in hand for Leon van der Linden. That one good option. Another great option, though. Here's Chandra.
Probably even better.
Defiance. In foil, no less.
Stylish. Yeah, Chandra is probably even better. Pia would have allowed Leon to animate the Aethersphere Harvester and then get in for 3 damage. But the Planeswalker is just a more powerful threat in general. It also deals 2, so close to 3.
Robin Dolar on 8 life and really needs to pull something together here if this is not going to go down to the 3rd game.
Yeah, one of those sideboard copies of To the Slaughter or Never to Return would be perfect here to deal with the Planeswalker. Without them, it's going to be tough. Even attempts to pressure the Planeswalker with something like Kalitas, if Robin even boarded it in, wouldn't really work against Chandra's -3.
So Leon van der Linden here firmly in the driver's seat, if you'll excuse the vernacular for this vehicles deck. 6 loyalty now for Chandra. Is it realistic to think that we might see a Chandra Ultimate in this game?
I think that is realistic, yes. Could easily see that.
Here's Pia Nalar.
Okay, I thought actually Leon was gonna exile the top card, but instead he goes for the mana. One reason to do that is to play around Supreme Will, so you have 3 mana up to pay for the counter magic. And even if Robin doesn't have Supreme Will, you still have mana left over for a Pia activation or potentially a clue sacrifice. So you can always put that mana to good use.
So yeah, Pia has activated to give the Aethersphere Harvester an additional point of power. That meaning that Robin Dolar is clinging on with just 4 life remaining.
And I do think that Robin had Supreme Will in hand. Yes, he did. So Leon definitely chose the right mode on Chandra there.
So he sees a few good ones. Kalatas did come in after sideboarding, but I don't know whether or not that's going to be quite enough at this point. Chandra particularly good against Kalatas, the -3 ability enough to deal with the legendary vampire.
Yeah, this is this is gonna be tough for Robin. I mean, he has to deal with essentially 4 troublesome permanents at this point over the course of 2 turns. Like if he boarded into the slaughter, maybe he can cobble something together with that, but he also needs Delirium. I think it's gonna be really, really difficult to get out of this. But again, if anyone can do it, it's Robin Dolar, but I would be surprised.
Never to return the pickup there for Robin Dolar.
Alright, so let's see. Maybe he can destroy Pia, then hope that Leon has literally nothing, just lands, so that Aethersphere Harvester won't even be able to animate, and then also never to return Chandra. I guess that's a plan.
So one part of the process, getting rid of Chandra.
Yep.
Then we're going to get rid of Pia.
So this plan is not going to work if Leon has any pilot for the Aethersphere Harvester, but if Leon bricks, nope. That will do it.
All right. A very straightforward strike back from Leon van der Linden. It will be going to a final game. And that was the power of Mardu vehicles that we saw so long ago, it feels like now. Mardu vehicles just absolutely dominating the Pro Tour back when we were sort of first getting used to the notion of Smuggler's Copter not being around anymore.
Yeah, there was Pro Tour Ether Revolt, where there were 6 copies of Mardu vehicles in the top 8. And then in the months after that, it definitely dominated Standard along with several other decks. In recent weeks, we hadn't really seen all that much of Mardu vehicles. Basically, after Hour of Devastation was released, one of the reasons for that was the release of Abrade, which is just a perfect answer to Heart of Kiran, one of the key cards in Mardu vehicles. But it's still a strong deck. As you saw this game, Toolcraft Exemplar, perhaps the most aggressive creature available in Standard. 3 power for 1 mana is just a ridiculous deal. And when you have 2 of them on the play early on, you put on so much pressure.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that Robin Dolar did put up quite a fight in that game.
He
I mean,
did.
the Flaying Tendrils on turn 3 was absolutely clutch. He was on 10 life before really anything had happened for him in the game. Managed to deal with the creatures that were in play there, but there was just still so much to deal with, and we saw the power of vehicles themselves, which is to say that even after all of the creatures had been removed, it didn't take nearly as long for Leon to rebuild because he already had Aethersphere Harvester in play.
Yeah, and coming back to vehicles, perhaps one reason why Mardu vehicles may have done well in this event was that we saw a lot of blue-white approach decks, right? The deck that just tries to answer cards 1 for 1, play Fumigate, and then 2 copies of Approach of the Second Sons. If a large part of your threat base is immune to Fumigate in particular, due to being a vehicle or a planeswalker or maybe a Scrap Heap Scrounger, then you can easily shrug off that sweeper and beat those blue-white approach decks way more readily than a deck like, say, Temur Energy, which is very much reliant on board presence with creatures. So, still Standard is evolving and developing, and sometimes it's worth going back to an old favorite.
I mean, I think that in general, there's a huge amount to be said for playing the deck that you know, playing the deck that you like. Even if you're losing, if you're playing a deck that you're enjoying playing, I think you get quite a lot more out of it. And that means that just little things like getting more test games in.
Yeah.
If you're having a good time while you're testing, that means that you'll play more test games. That means that you'll get a better feel for the format overall. That means that when it comes to these clutch situations, you've got a bigger experience base to pull your ideas from in terms of what to do, and you feel more comfortable just in your own skin while you're playing those matches.
It ends up mattering a lot. It may just seem like a couple percentage points, but over the course of an entire tournament, knowing all the matchups, feeling like, yeah, I've played this before, I know how this game will go, that definitely helps.
It's also a very long GP to play if you're going to win. I mean, this is a relatively small GP, something a little under 1,000 players, but playing through all of these rounds with a deck where you just feel comfortable with it in every moment, it will feel like that time will fly by.
Mm-hmm.
If you're kind of learning by doing a little bit as you're going along, that's a tough old weekend.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially in Standard you can go by two approaches. Either chase the metagame every weekend and try to be one step ahead. This is what people like, for instance, Brad Nelson and Corey Baumeister are very good at. And that can definitely work. You can easily be successful with that. But it also requires that you put in a lot of time testing new decks every week and figuring out what might be best for the next weekend. And the other approach is just take a deck at the beginning of the season and keep playing it for a year. Sometimes you will find that your deck of choice is not very well positioned in the metagame, but hey, you can still keep playing, build up that experience base, and then eventually you might just find yourself in a weekend where it is well positioned or luck falls on your side, and because you're making the right decisions more frequently than the people who are changing decks every week, that is an advantage you can leverage as well.
And I know that this is something that you, especially at the start of this last year of Pro Tours, were very keen to experiment with, that you locked in on decks very early for each Pro Tour.
I did.
And then were able to get your testing in, get more games in perhaps than many of your opponents, and presumably when there were a week and a half to go, if you wanted to, you could spend that time either relaxing, getting in the time zone, or drafting a whole lot.
Yep. Well, as I mentioned, I think both approaches have merit. But if you know a certain play style suits you, then you might as well pick a deck and stick with that.
All right, we're kicking things off here in what will be the final game of GP Turin. After this, we'll be heading across to Washington, D.C. for the later stages in that tournament. Scrap Heap Scroungel, the first play here from Leon van der Linden. He did not have a one-drop in this game. And, of course, on the draw, he has a lot more to worry about cards like Censor. There is a Censor in hand for Robin Dola here, but Scrap Heap Scrounger, a bit of a messy one to counter because it could come back from the graveyard. As it stands, Robin Dola actually going with a Fatal Push instead, perhaps hoping to snag something bigger and better with his counter magic later.
Yeah, that's fair. He also keeps the option of cycling Sensor in case he starts missing land drops. And it's probably more important to be able to counter something like a potential Pianalar on the next turn. Rather Sensor that than Fatal Push the token. But also be able to censor, say, Gideon or Chandra if they end up coming down.
So Dispossess being... sorry,
no, it's Doomfall.
Doomfall being played here in order to get cards out of Robin Dola's hand one way or another. Either they reveal their hand and you're going to choose an online card and exile it, or in this case, Robin Dola's going to pay 2 mana, reveal Censor, and put Doomfall in the graveyard.
Yep. That definitely seems better than giving Leon a choice. The Doomfalls were just boarded in, and I expect instead of stuff like the Fatal Push or the Walking Ballista that are relatively low impact in this matchup. It's not the most aggressive card, Doomfall, but well, just trades 1 for 1, and at this point it's a bit of a game of attrition. Leon is just gonna be trying to stick a threat every turn. And hope that one sticks, at least before the heavy-hitting 5 and 6 mana creatures from Robin start coming down.
So here's that Chandra that proved so potent earlier in the match. This time round, I believe that there's a couple of different options available to Robin Dola in terms of counter magic. He's got a negate. He's also got a Supreme Will. He's got the Scarab God and Grasp of Darkness. Those are his 4 cards. Pretty solid 4.
Yes, indeed. On the one hand, countering it with negate might be more appealing because Supreme Will has a bit more utility, but I guess keeping negate in hand also has value because then you can play it on a turn where you only have 2 mana up, and as the game progresses, the counter magic effect of Supreme Will also diminishes because Leon may just keep playing lands and then pay for the mana.
Painful Truths here for 2.
So suddenly it seems like Robin is the aggro deck in the matchup. Robin has the only creature on the battlefield, and now Leon is spending mana to draw cards. Declaration
and indeed
in
to
Stone.
remove creatures. Declaration in Stone, the perfect answer to the Scarab God. Exiling it. Yes, Robin Dolar gets a clue token in return, but that a rate that Leon van der Linden certainly does not mind.
Yeah, that might be the type of card that's also worth boarding in when you're gonna be on the draw as the Mortar Vehicles player, and you feel like, well, I may not be able to win just by pure aggro beatdown. I may just need a couple more answers for all these powerful creatures that Robin has. And, well, if Leon did not have that Declaration in Stone, he probably would have just lost to that Scarab God, so good sideboarding on him there.
Suddenly Robin Dolar is the one playing more creatures. Gifted Aetherborn coming down for him. The 2/3 Death Touch lifelink Aetherborn Vampire.
Yeah, this matchup of blue-black aggro versus Mardu control, in a way.
Heart of Kieran there coming from Leon van der Linden. No creatures to crew it just yet. Aethersphere Harvester, the follow-up, so we could see some crewing up the chain. Crew cost 3 on Heart of Kieran, a little bit easier for the Aethersphere Harvester.
Yeah, so none of these cards really do anything yet. Though, it is worth pointing out that there's a Scrap Heap Scrounger still in Leon's graveyard, so if Leon plays a creature on the next turn, even if Robin counters or kills it, then Scrap Heap Scrounger can come back. So it's quite likely that there will be a pilot for at least one of those vehicles on the next turn, assuming that Leon has at least one creature in hand, which seems reasonable.
Grasp of Darkness and Negate in hand here for Robin Dolar. Chooses to let that Aethersphere Harvester resolve.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Robin Dolar cracks the clue that he was so generously given by Leon van der Linden. Draws himself into Kalatas, Trait of Get, and then also finds a land on the top of his deck.
So Robin could have countered some of these vehicles, but I think he might just be going for a game plan where he's trying to deprive Leon of any pilots throughout the game, if at all possible, leaving him with 2, well, cars in a parking lot without a pilot. That might be the game plan that Dolar is on at the moment. Though it's not, if he goes for that plan, it's not always easy to just kill every single creature that Leon might make.
So there's Gideon and Scrap Heap Scrounger in hand here for Leon van der Linden. If he plays the Scrap Heap Scrounger, then he can definitely get a creature in play one way or another. Either the one that he's just cast or one of the 2 that are in the graveyard if it gets countered in order to get it in using the ability on Scrap Heap Scrounger. Heart of Kieran gets crewed, swings in. Pretty straightforward set of attacks there.
Yeah, Gideon would almost surely have just been countered. So I like this play by Leon. Also, in general, when you're playing against a blue control deck like this, and they have so much mana up, so many cards in hand, it's typically best to not play your very best threat that's just gonna get countered. Instead, deploy something less threatening, which, well, if it doesn't get countered, fine, you have something. If it does get countered, good, then they don't have the counter spell for your bigger threat.
Now this Gifted Aetherborn's lifelink here really taking the edge off what Leon van der Linden can do with his vehicles in the mid-game as we are here now. 6 mana available means that Robin Dolar can do something like cast Kalatas, Traitor of Get and still have mana up for a negate, which may be tempting. He's also drawn into a Censor now, so if it works out that Leon wants to go wide and play a few spells in one turn, he could get punished for that.
Yeah, this is shaping up to be an interesting game. Lots of back and forth. And it's not clear who holds the advantage at this point yet. A sensor is not gonna do all that much probably. So I also wouldn't be surprised to see a cycle here. Maybe not this turn, but could be the turn after.
There is an Archangel Avacyn in hand, though, for Leon van der Linden. If that could get snagged with a sensor, Robin Dolar, I'm sure, would be very pleased with that outcome.
That would be a good exchange indeed.
Though I guess with Grasp of Darkness, he's got a little bit of insurance against that one, no matter which way things go.
Yeah. And the problem with playing Kalitas, even with negate mana up, is that Leon does have 3 mana, which does signal Unlicensed Integration. And if you're in Dolar's position and you expect that Leon has Unlicensed in hand, you may not want to give him an option to spend that 3 untapped mana while he had it. But looks like there is no Unlicensed Integration, so that is relatively good news for Robin Dolar fans.
Right now, Robin Dolar is playing Vampire Tribal. Something that will probably get a little bit better with Ixalan, even if Kalitas is not a part of that equation.
No, but Gifted Eaterborn is still going to be around. I believe Yahenni is another vampire that is going to be legal after the rotation. I'll surely be trying to build some kind of Vampire Tribal deck after the full contents of Ixalan are released.
I think that Vampire Tribal is third on my list to build after Dinosaurs and Pirates, but it's on the list. It's made the list. It will be coming in. It's just a matter of where it sits in the queue. Here comes Gideon. That's enough for a negate from Robin Dolar. Tapping out, so if there's more from Leon, he can deploy it now, but I'm not sure that there is at this point.
Yeah, and also the decision many turns ago to counter something with Supreme Will rather than with negate has worked out perfectly for Robin Dolar, just because he was able to set up the Kalitas plus negate in one turn, which otherwise he wouldn't have been able to do. This man can just look into the future many turns in advance and see the plays that he has to make today.
Another land the draw there for the turn for Robin Dolar. Fairly soon he may be looking to start killing off creatures so that he can create zombies with his Kalitas. I think he might have just found a way of doing so.
Yeah, he has a Grasp of Darkness. I guess Robin could start by, let's see, attacking with... If you attack with Kalitas, then Leon can crew Ethosphere Harvester, but you would be happy with that because you can grow Kalitas to a 5/6 if need be. Not sure if you want to be attacking with the Gifted Eaterborn, but well, that one might as well get in there as well. It has that touch, so nothing really bad can happen from that.
At some point, Flaying Tendrils that he's just drawn might be a nice answer to that Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Doesn't trigger the Kalitas though.
Alright, looks like everyone wants a piece of Leon van der Linden right now. So, Heart of Kirin gets crewed here. If Robin Dolar chooses to fire off his Grasp of Darkness on the Heart of Kirin, then there could be a new crewing in response. As things stand,
Robin Dolar's trap was activated. Leon was hoping, I think, that Robin had basically nothing, and that this attack was a semi-bluff. As it turned out, it was not. Leon's hope that the 4/4 Heart of Kirin would take down the 3/4 Kalitas did not come true, and instead he was on the receiving end of a 2-for-1 exchange and is now facing a humongous 5/6 lifelinker, and still no Unlicensed Integration or other removal spell to deal with it.
Yeah, if Robin Dolar is the beatdown right now, Leon van der Linden not doing very well at being the control.
Nope.
Robin just wants to take on all of the roles for himself.
Yeah, to me this looks like it's gonna be removal spell or a bust on the next turn, because Sure, Leon has Archangel Avacyn, but that's not exactly going to help all that much. It might block for a turn. Could even block and take down Gifted Eaterborn if it comes to that, but it won't be able to take down Kalitas. All those vehicles have not really helped Leon all that much. Not the best blockers, that's for sure.
Leon van der Linden sitting back. He's got a few cards in hand here, so that enough to give Robin Dolar pause.
I'm pretty sure that Robin is expecting Archangel Avacyn here.
And how bad is Archangel Avacyn for him here?
It's not so bad. At least Kalitas can attack unopposed. If you really expect Archangel Avacyn, you may not want to attack with all your creatures, because then you give one up for basically no value. It's an interesting attack with the Gifted Eaterborn here. Feels a bit ambitious, unless Robin has a removal spell for the Archangel. In that case, it would be fine.
Robin just rereading the powerful mythic.
Okay, so
there is the Grasp of Darkness.
So he's probably letting the indestructibility resolve, and then afterwards playing the Grasp, so that Leon does not have the option to crew up the Aethersphere Harvester while the indestructibility is still on the stack.
More zombies. At least there's a block.
Yeah, but this just feels like desperation moves for Leon. At this point, the blue-black control deck is in such a good position.
It's a blue-black beatdown deck at this point.
Sorry, I was blue-black aggro versus Mardu control, but Mardu did not really succeed at being a good control deck here.
Robin Dolar going to decide whether or not he'd rather force some more damage through here and I guess stop any lifelink from Leon, or if he just wants to trade off with that Aethersphere Harvester.
I think he's also figuring out what might happen, how he could still lose this game, and an unlicensed integration off the top targeting Kalitas might be a little bit of an issue. So you may not want to go all in and sacrifice all those zombies. Rather have some zombies left over in case there is a removal spell for Kalitas on the next turn.
Alright, looks like we have got a Kalitas activation. He's eating one of those zombies, getting in a little bit more damage here.
I know that Gifted Eaterborn, it's a vampire, but it's not a zombie, so you can't even sacrifice it to Kalitas if you like. But trading it for Aethersphere Harvester is a perfect one-for-one trade.
Can't Kalitas eat vampires as well? I may be misremembering.
I've only ever seen it eat zombies. It's vampire or zombie, you're right. You could have sacrificed it.
He's a hungry hippo, that one. Leon van der Linden looking on here as Robin Dolar's at 36 life with the only creatures on the board. He's still got a card in hand. He's got fewer cards in hand than Leon has, but on every other metric, Robin is way ahead here.
So is there going to be an unlicensed integration for the Kalitas? That is what Leon needs to honestly stand some chance in this game.
Draws another card. Extends the hand. We have our champion, Robin Dolar, blue-black control, taking things down here in Turin. And wow, we saw so many different angles of attack in that final.
Yeah.
In game one, it looked like it was all about the control.